Hello, everybody. This is Tour podcast number 4, and I am Herre Johansen, and I am the singer and the guitar player of Tour. I am in Prague at the moment, where I live. In a new flat, by the way, hence the changed background and the mess behind me.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tad, I'm the drummer of Tour, and I'm talking to you from Budapest, and Gunnar is taping against something.
Hell, Gunnar.
Well,
This is
amazing.
getting your running gag.
Just a little bit of heat and gaffer tape is worth nothing.
That is true.
Please.
Anywho, let's go. Yeah?
And Thaddeus, you were done introducing yourself as a pros?
I think I was, yes, I was.
So,
Gunnar?
guy, the one who's in line.
Oh,
Fy fan!
hello. I'm Gunnar. Apparently the bass player in Tyr. I did not know that, but I know that now. So, hello, how are you out there in the wild world? Whoa! Hello.
Where are you?
I have no idea. In my room. Ha! I got that one right. You almost fooled me there. I am in the Faroe Islands again. Still
Excellent.
Always.
Beautiful.
in these times. Yeah. So, you like that introduction?
I liked it a lot. I was moved
Okay,
to
cool.
tears by it.
Wow. And no, you weren't.
So, as I said, this tour podcast episode 4, we put out episodes on the 7th and 22nd of each month, so you know when to tune in. You can
You do?
subscribe to our channel. Yes, you do. You
Okay.
can subscribe to our channel. You can like this video and share it. Hit the notification bell so YouTube lets you know when we upload new material. And you can get early access to our podcast by a week or so. And
Where
to
do I
some
subscribe on the
other
channel?
exclusive subscribe. I will tell you you need a sub pen for that. That's a normal pen.
I mean, that's the purgatory of dead puns. Come on.
As I was saying, you can get early access to some of this
You
material
said ass.
by supporting us
Sorry,
on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/tearband. And heartfelt thanks, of course, to those who already support us on Patreon.
As you can see, we do classy stuff.
Absolutely classy stuff.
I bought this.
Good, let's hear how it sounds when you unravel it.
Maybe keep that for later.
That will
Okay.
come out of nowhere as usual.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was one festival that we are not about to play, that may come up in the coming months, and they told me they were going to announce on the weekend. I haven't found any announcement, but I had written down the details for this podcast to make it public. I'm not sure if I should do it now because I haven't seen the announcement that we're playing at the festival.
One moment.
I think
Huh?
I will
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
anyway and
They say
just risk it.
It's okay. It's okay.
Good. There's the Booker dwarf under Gunnar's desk, so it's good to go. It is the first Viking festival in the Faroes. They are in May. I think it's on in the middle, like the 16th of May. I don't have the date right in front of me. Anyway, you can look it up. The organizer is an organization called the Viking Ship, and it's in Hov in the Faroes on the southern island. They have had this Viking festival for many years now. We played there, I think, twice. Do you remember, Gunnar?
I don't know. I just think organizer, sanitizer. Yes, I remember we played somewhere around there once or twice.
Yeah, once or twice.
I think once.
It's a cool little festival. Yeah, probably only once. My memory fails me. You can look up this organization. It's called thevikingship.com, and they are having a Viking ship built to, I think, in Norway or at Roskilde. I'm not sure. To be shipped and owned by this organization and at the festival. And we, the band, are proud ambassadors of this ship that has yet to be built.
Are they going to travel?
Hoping to I don't know if it's going to be a seaworthy vessel or an exhibition vessel. Honestly, I
Okay.
guess they will be eager to try it for real.
I mean, it would be
it's
it would be really nice to travel from Roskilde with it to the Faroes.
It would be very nice. It would be very nice. That would be an experience indeed. So I'm not sure now if I spoke too early, but there it is. And we hope this festival happens. Nothing is certain in these crazy times. So how did I get into all this? Speaking of getting into things, how the hell did I get into music in the first place?
Did you see that segue?
How did you?
The first thing that jumps to mind is that I before I even knew how to play guitar, I really loved music and especially metal. Some specific bands. I had some experiences when I was in my, I don't know, I would say around 13, 14, 15, with hearing some songs that was, it was like a religious experience. Absolutely transfixed and moved into, you know, another world by them. And about the same time I started to play guitar, I was not a talent of any kind. I was absolutely horrible. Some friends, some school mates of mine were playing guitar, and one of them was quite talented, very good at it, and I was kind of fascinated by that. But that didn't really, you know, that didn't really move me. That didn't make me want to do anything. But when I heard these songs, I can mention a few of the songs. It would be stuff like The Final Countdown by Europe, Love Bites by Judas Priest, and incidentally also Love Bites by Def Leppard, or some other songs on that album. Pour Some Sugar on Me, the Hysteria album, TNT's album Intuition, for example. What else was there? Flight of Icarus by Iron Maiden.
Oh yeah.
Some songs, yeah, Mötley Crüe, not to forget the Girls, Girls, Girls album, that motorcycle in the start. It's so cheesy now, but shit, that worked when I was 15. So then I got a guitar. My big brother had a guitar, an acoustic guitar, before I even started, and he had. It never turned into a band. They made a small, you know, band with some friends in a garage, and they were practicing, and I found that quite fascinating, and I knew immediately when they started talking about scales and keys that I was absolutely fascinated by the subject of music theory. Even before I knew anything about that, I knew, yeah, that is the shit. That's what I'm going to learn something about. and then you just slowly developed. It got slowly better and better, and made some new friends, among others Gunnar, and we made a band, and here we are.
30 years later.
Yeah, there were plenty of our friends, Gunnar, I'm sure you remember, who did the same thing, but they just move on into more reasonable and more responsible areas. But there are some of us who are just made so that there's nothing else we can do, as we've discussed in an earlier podcast. So against all odds and through irresponsible behavior, here I am.
Yeah, that was interesting,
choice.
I must say.
There will be some overlap in your story and mine, Gunnar, but that part.
I guess. So Thaddeus.
Oh, shall I?
Okay.
Okay.
No, let me say that again. Thaddeus! I don't know what the hell happened there. Oh. I am a chicken.
How did you get into this shit, Thaddeus?
Well, everything started, I think, when my half brother was in the army, and I was allowed to use his turntable. And I found back in northern Germany when I was, well, my whole family was still living there. And I was about 4, I think, when I found Abbey Road by the Beatles, and I put it on, and I never listened to it from beginning to end. I only listened to Come Together and maybe the next song, but I was absolutely hooked by Come Together. The like sinister like start of the whole building up to the refrain. And afterwards, when we moved to to Hungary, well, since my family didn't know anything about Hungary, about the language, about anything, they just thought, well, yeah, we have some kids here, so they might have to go to school. So let's check out some schools in this unknown city of ours. And so by chance and accident, was I was brought to a school with a special musical class, and I was enrolled there. So we were singing quite a lot in choir from very early age. So I think that helped a lot. Then I started to play guitar, acoustic guitar, when I was 10. Well, that was not really my thing, I think. And when I was 15, and of course, before that, one of the most important albums for me was Judas Priest, Painkiller. So when I heard that, I bought that on cassette in '93, I think. I was 10 back then. And I listened the first time to that, I was instantly hooked, and I knew, okay, this is gonna work out for me well. And then when I was 15, I was with a classmate of mine. We went out having some beers. We went to a show, and on our way home, he told me, yeah, well, he started to play the bass guitar, and he was writing some lyrics, and he's got a guitar player as well, but they're missing a drummer. And we had some. We were not sober, so I said, yeah, dude, I'm gonna start learning the drums, man. Don't worry. And he stops, takes a look, and he pulls out a small piece of paper out of his coat and gives me the paper. Okay, here's a phone number with a drum teacher. Call him tomorrow. And I was like, oh, well, this was unexpected. Oh, okay. I mean, this is, yeah, sure. I'm going to do that. So he just had, probably he planned that, but so I called the guy afterwards. And yeah, well, 22 years later, I'm here.
So he was just waiting for someone to agree to be drummer, and then handing in this number. So
I guess. I mean, it was very out of the blue. Like okay, here's a phone number.
Oh, good.
Whoa. Okay,
good
that
move,
was
good
convenient. Move. Convenient. Yeah. I see what you did there. Yeah. That's it. More or less.
Cool.
Gunarski.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been thinking back on this. I actually remember way back in time, when I was almost non-existing, I heard on the radio a song from Saxon called "Wheels of Steel."
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I came to think about recently, and I remember I liked that very much. They had this whole middle section where they just go "Wheels of Steel" over and over again. It was just really kind of AC/DC rock music. It was good, but I never thought much about it. So way back later, I always was interested in music. I like drums. I always liked drums. So I actually got into electric boogie and shit like that.
Electric boogie.
Mostly because there was a drum machine on there. I had no idea what metal was at that time. So, and I had every now and then I heard some track. I heard Number of the Beast when it came out. I had no idea what that was. I didn't have time to sit down and actually check it out. So years later, and a school friend of mine, he lent me this video of Iron Maiden. I'll show it right now.
Like a cassette.
Da, 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 da.
Now, that
This
brings
is
back
the
some
shit.
nice memories.
This video, oh man, I was completely blown away. And
it was on a VHS tape, right?
Yes, on a VHS tape. And I looked at that video for, if I say 50 times, I'm probably not far off. I mean, I just went, and just like you said, I dove into that world. I'm completely fascinated by the whole thing, especially with Iron Maiden, that all the stage set up and what really got my attention was Nico McBrain and Steve Harris. Those two guys, I just saw the smile of Nico McBrain. I just said, this guy is having the hell of his time, you know. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So initially I wanted to play drums, and I also saw Steve Harris, how he just made all the audience just pumped up just by pointing his bass. Woo! It's amazing. Still to this day, I get that feeling back, and that's what I actually use on stage very much. That image, because I think it's so important. And but I didn't have any instruments or anything, and I couldn't afford any really. So finally, I afforded to buy a Fender-like guitar. It's a black, very nice looking black Fender Stratocaster look-alike guitar. Probably called Max Tone or something like that. And I learned a few riffs on there. So I wanted to play music. And because I couldn't afford drums, unfortunately. So I saw that Here, or found out that Here played guitar. So I bothered Here the shit out. I said, let's make a band. Let's make a band. And Here was like, he was kind of arrogant and you don't know shit. So, and I think he actually came by at my place, and he was not very impressed with what I could play, because already by then he was actually pretty good by then. And so later on, him and a friend of ours, they asked me, they needed a bass player. So here actually the same day, he asked me at school, said if I wanted to play bass. I had no idea what the thing was. I think Steve Harris played bass, so yeah, why not? But I said, there's just one problem. I don't have a bass. And Here said, oh, no problem. I'll buy a bass today or something like that. So fine.
Mr. Generous.
And this is actually, I still remember this evening, because we went to Harris' place, which we eventually always did at his parents' place. Fantastic parents. And I learned the first song that evening, which was Midsummer Morning by Spider.
Spider.
Yes, I still remember this. And you can't imagine how happy I was. I was playing with two guys. I was actually playing in something that looked like a band, and I could play a fucking song on the bass. I never forget this. It was a fantastic moment in my life. So
Amazing.
there you have it, more or less.
Interesting. I'd forgotten a lot of that. Interesting story.
And all the nice albums. These are
Oh, I have that one.
all the nice ones that inspired me into music.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You got a lot of them, and they're coming.
Power Slave, yes.
Stuff.
Whee! Whee!
Yeah.
And there's more.
That's lovely stuff, man. Oh, the time of LPs. Yeah, you said, Thaddeus, you were using the turntable of your big brother. Something similar happened to me. My big brother was working on the ocean, so he went out fishing for weeks at a time, and I would take completely without permission his turntable and listen to all his LPs. He bought a lot of LPs. I never bought. I just couldn't afford anything. I never bought any music. I bought a few cassettes. That's all.
Yeah.
I would listen to music on the radio and on my brother's turntable, and I listened to albums, from one end to the other, trying to memorize all the guitar parts, solos, and rhythm, especially AC/DC, Mötley Crüe, Def Leppard, other stuff. So,
but also you have to remember that me and Harry grew up in a period in Faroe Islands where the land was in financial difficulties.
Right.
So there was quite hard we could find some work now and then, But the pay was so bad that usually you could not even afford to buy a fucking record. So
Yeah, I had some jobs from like working at a small gas station and in the fishing industry, and they drove me close to insanity sometimes. And music was a wonderful escape from that.
Oh yeah,
Something that felt meaningful and somehow felt like it had a future, but here we are and it didn't. Anyway, we have quite a few answers to go through. Questions to answer.
That's the one.
We have quite a few answers to find the questions to. So
that is what I call a very nice vending.
Yeah. It is it exactly.
It is.
There's we give top priority to questions that come through Patreon because those people pay for this shit. And so there's a guy called R on Patreon who asks, well, he has one question for each of us. He says about podcast number 3, that was great. I have some more questions for you guys. He asks Thaddeus,
yes.
Do you play to a click track live? Do you have experience with recording some songs without a metronome as a backbone to the tempo? What is the biggest tempo fail you experienced during performing live?
Well, okay, 3 questions. Yes, I play to a click track. Well, we all do, actually. And even in my former band, I was playing almost since the beginning to a click. Well, not a click track. I had a metronome and like headphones on. And later on, we were using a click track as well. So yes, I think it's just it's quite necessary in heavy metal, especially if you're using like choir tracks or additional guitar tracks. So it doesn't work without it because you have to start there and stop there to be on point with the additional tracks and channels. I was thinking, I think I never played in the studio without a metronome. I played on maybe 14 albums or 15 so far, and no, we always had metronome click track because we were tracking the songs, each instrument after another. So you have to have the click for that. I never played a song in studio with a whole band in one. I had some shows, very, very early shows, like almost 20 years ago, with a big band at high school, for example, where I didn't use a click, and some talent shows afterwards. We of course didn't win, but yeah. So always playing to click track, and the biggest tempo fail. Well, I mean, there were quite a lot during the years. I don't remember a specific one, but sometimes you just don't get the notation right or the measure when the accent is not on 1 and 3 but on 2 and 4 and it gets speed up over 200 BPM or something. Sometimes you're too much in the zone than to get that there was actually a change in tempo notation. So yeah, it happens. But sometimes when your fellow band colleagues are better than you or have more routine, then they are driving you back on the tempo. In the worst case, they are not, and you're taking them with you, and it gets chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it happened once. I'm not sure if it's you or an earlier drummer that maybe twice, that we simply turn off the backtrack during a live show and played a song without the backtrack.
We did that, yes. I mean, I did that with you guys several times because
Just to be clear, it's not necessarily your fault. Anyone can go off click, and
yeah.
and anything could happen.
No, I mean, especially in the early, like in the first 1 or 2 years I joined you guys, we had quite a few problems with the hardware, so with the backtrack machine and all that stuff, because they were not really stable. So sometimes it was just we had to switch off because the click was just not on point, or something was
What
not.
were we using to begin with? Was it on
iPad?
On iPad?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not a good solution.
No.
We know that now, but we can afford better.
Can we? That's good.
Lately, it's been okay.
We used to play without click track through our whole career almost until not
Yeah,
Too many
not
years
not
ago,
not that
actually.
long ago. Like
Okay.
when the arrangements got too big, really, to play live. What you have to choose from when you make bigger arrangements is either play a downsized version live, or get more musicians on tour, like people to sing choir and play extra guitars, keyboard, whatever, or backtracks. So the cheapest thing would, of course, be to make it without the additional tracks that you use on album. But honestly, I find that extremely disappointing when I see bands do that live. So I didn't want to do that myself. The next option is backtrack, which is where we're at the moment.
Yeah.
Gunnar,
Und
this R person asks you,
oh, shit,
any
yeah.
any stories from the construction job? Does it put more strain on your fingers compared to playing on tour?
Well, it actually doesn't. Actually, it keeps me more fit, to be honest, because I use my hands a lot, my fingers a lot, so they actually get stronger, amazingly enough. As long as you don't do, my camera is falling. Oh my God, my camera is
Let's hear that tape rip again.
Oh yes. It's been so long since the last one.
As long as
You said
don't-
ass.
I said ass again. As long as you don't do heavy lifting for too long.
Yeah.
Because that will fuck you up, really. So that's about it, yeah.
Well,
No. But did you say any funny stories from...
I guess a funny story would come in handy right now.
Oh man, I don't know if they're funny, but there's many. Well, when I started learning as a plumber, I was under a sink, and there's not a lot of place under a sink, so I had to tighten a bolt, and I saw this thing coming a mile away. I thought, this thing is gonna hit me in the head. At the same time I had that thought, it hit me in the head. Very, very, very hard. A fucking spanner in my head. That hurts, that shit. But there's so many, and there's ugly stories as well as
Yeah, they are
about shit.
I've heard many of them, and we should get
Me
into
too.
them sometime. We really should.
Plumber
Gunnar,
stories.
Plumber stories.
Yeah.
Let's make that a subject for
A
next
special
for
episodes.
episode 5. Yes.
Special
let's do that.
podcast episode, plumber stories.
I even took a fall from a roof. So
Oh.
yeah,
Wow.
that was. Yeah, it was while we were working at the salmon factory. Just building a house, I fell off a roof.
I remember that now that you mentioned
I
it. Yeah.
was limping for 14 days. So
Yeah.
it happens a lot during construction.
You know what would be nice subject for a podcast? It would just be shitty jobs we had on the side, and
Oh, yeah.
what we had to do.
Oh yes.
I'll make a note for episode 5 and 6, and we'll maybe get into
Not
that.
a bad idea.
Nice.
Anyway, the last question from R on Patreon is for me, and he asks, is it different to write songs for female vocal in Surma compared to Tuir? You look younger than Wikipedia suggests. Are you drinking some potion of youth? Now, writing vocals, of course, you have to think simply, what can the singer, who's going to sing this? What can you do? I've done that for tour most of the time. You know, who's going to sing this and what's their, convenient vocal range. And then we had Liv Christine on the Valkyrie album, and of course I keep that in mind. I didn't even ask her, just listen to their albums and figure out what range she sings inside. And with Surma, Victoria's right here, I just asked her, can you sing this? Which key do you want it in? Usually she came up with the vocal melody herself and has the approximate key already, so there's not even a consideration of that. So it's just knowing who's going to sing it and what they can sing. And I tend to, I thrive, unfortunately, outside my comfort zone. So I tend to push myself to sing both lower and higher than is natural for me, and then I can do with ease. But that's how I like it, and that's what I've done many times. I think every time I get tired of it, I should avoid it, but I never do. Now, if you could see me on Monday morning at 6:30, you would not think I look so young anymore. So it's not about what I'm drinking, it's about what I'm not drinking, I think, or smoking for that matter. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. I never drank very much, except for the tour with Sirenia in 2016, where I drank very much. Right now it's only water. And a drink every now and then. I don't know. I don't think that has so much to do with it. It's just genetic, I think. The older I get, the more I think it's purely genetic and luck. Because I know some people who mistreated themselves badly throughout their lives who look excellent, and the other way around. I'm afraid you're born with at least 80 or 90% of it. So there's no secret to that. Next question. Gunnar Saurus, not you, Gunnar, although that might maybe you made another YouTube account and put this question yourself. I don't know. Anyway, Gunnar Saurus asks on YouTube, I love the music, guys. My question is, what's your favorite song to play live? From a listener's perspective, for me, it's got to be Blood of Heroes. The song creates such a hype whenever I hear it. P.S. Can I get you guys to play Land whenever you come to Chicago again? Cheers, stay safe and well. My favorite song to play live, like we talked about last time, you get tired of the songs, like from a purely listener's perspective. As a musician, you can get very tired of the songs. So I tend to like the songs that people like the most. So it's not necessarily the song, it's just seeing people's reaction, and that makes it funny to play it. And Blood of Heroes is definitely one of those songs. People go kind of moderately apeshit when they hear it, and it makes it fun. And you know, it comes from playing the song. So I like playing that song. Then there are songs like Hold the Hidden Hammer High, Fire and Flame, Sinclair's Voice, songs that, you know, get a really good reaction, and it's the good reaction from the audience that makes me like to play those songs. About playing Land, it's a 16.5-minute song, and we've never played it live. It's possible. It's not one of those songs that would be more difficult than anything else we've done, but time is always a restriction when we plan a tour or a festival, and taking the time that would otherwise allow for 4 songs to play 1 song, unless the song were very popular, which Land unfortunately isn't. I think it's unlikely we're going to play Land unless we make some kind of special show. Your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
That would actually be awesome thing from fans to do kind of like for a night for the fans sometimes in the future, where we play something different.
Only the B-side
yeah,
songs.
one of the B-side songs. That would I would love to do that actually.
Me too.
Just
me
to
too.
get into the old songs as well. So.
And to what songs to play live, or the favorite songs for me, I really enjoyed playing Alvor Concours in February with the symphonic orchestra, because it's a very difficult song, I think, but it had really huge impact. I mean, that was the first and last time we played that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So that for one, but
That was amazing to play.
yeah, wasn't it right? I mean,
Yes,
it was really great.
The hairs were
Yeah,
standing right up in mine.
yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that song.
I all the time when I check the symphonic show on YouTube, I get goosebumps myself. So, but also I love to play "Mayor of My Night" because it's a very energetic song, and like you said here, the people go moderately apeshit. I mean, you just start and it's like ah, and Fire and Flame, of course, and I like to play "Hail to the Hammer" because it has a very laid back, almost doom metal kind of vibe. Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
that too, because
I,
people like it mostly, and it's very easy to play, I think.
Yeah.
I must
yeah,
agree. I think we're on the same page, me and Thaddeus. Absolutely. So,
Ah.
those are wonderful songs. Even "Hail to the Hammer."
Yeah.
You just see the people just love that song.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah, so.
It's surprising, I think, because it's not it doesn't have
It's
have
it's
that kind of
It's a
energy.
very slow song, but it always has worked. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I think the catch line, the hook line in the chorus is what gets people. Every time we've been on tour and played that song, the crew and other bands are singing "Hail to the Hammer" or any silly variation of that they can think.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, it's surprisingly catchy. That might be one of the explanation for that. Anyway, next question. Sami Fossil asks on YouTube, how do you choose the ballads and kväje that go on the album, or is it just random? I suppose that would be my area. I just look through, not even just for albums, all the time. I look through what ballads there are, what interesting melodies there are, because, I haven't discovered them all. I have recordings and a huge book collection of melodies, and I like to go through those to dig for gold, really, and see if I can find anything that's interesting from a metal perspective. And at any given moment, I have 5 or 10 ideas lying around on my computer of stuff that we could do, and I pick out usually 2 for each album and work on those. So the random part is me just looking around for whatever there is that I haven't discovered yet. But when it comes to putting it on album, I take the ideas that I think have the best chance of being a good song and are the most developed, and that I've done something interesting with. So that's how that goes. NeoCat1993 asks on YouTube, are there any songs you have never played live? Yes, there are plenty. In fact, I think most songs we have never played live. The thing is, as you said earlier, sometimes you want to give fans something different, but you have to tour a lot to get to that. Now, if we came back to the same place for the second time in less than 3 or 4 months, you might want to change up the repertoire, but you play like once every 2 years in the same area, and it doesn't really warrant that you change up play older songs, play less popular songs. So everywhere you go, people are seeing you possibly for the first, maybe second or third time. Very few people do see us like 10 or 20 times, but that's absolutely not the majority of people. People are there for the first time mostly, and then second or third time maybe. So they want to hear the popular songs, and if we came back 2 months later, we would have to be able to sell those tickets or do anything interesting for the people. You'd have to play less popular songs, from further down the list. You just never get to that because the amount of touring you have to do is insane, and we honestly never got to that level. of touring at least. So we play the popular songs live over and over again, and it's still the first, second, or third time people hear it live every time they come to the show. So it's kind of stuck there. We'd have to, tour much more than we do at the moment to get to that. So there are 2 or 3 songs from each album, maybe 4 from the album By the Light of the Northern Star that we play over and over again. It would be nice to get to the other ones, but if we were to play something like Land, I mean, the amount of practice and time we have to put into it is just not. Well, you saw when we were going to play Ulvkongur, it takes months of practice, each on our own, and then days of practice together, and then we can play a decent version of it. And it's just.
Yeah, you have to remember that many of these songs are done once in the studio, and it's probably the only time we ever played it.
Yeah.
And then you never touch the subject again. You might, as the listener, actually listen to it 100 times, hence we just played it once.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to that feeling, that moment and everything, it's quite extensive.
Yeah.
So.
It is. We've forgotten them. Some of them are not even written down in notes, which is a huge problem that we have fixed now. But for some of the older songs, it would be a nightmare to figure out how they were played even.
Yeah, just to relearn them by ear.
Yeah. So that's that. Next question. Melvin Aponte asks on YouTube. Well, he made a very long comment. I can't read it all, but the gist of his question is, who composed Ragnarok? How long did it take to put together musically? I did almost all of that, and I had very good time to do it. I sat alone for 3 years working on it, and it was after we just released two albums very close to each other and an EP. So things kind of died down after that. We moved back to the Faroes. I was living in Denmark when we made the first 2 LPs and CDs and then the EP. And then I moved to the Faroes, and I had pretty good circumstances to sit and work, and I sat for 3 years just tinkering with the details and putting it all together.
On Ragnarok?
Ragnarok, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Teddy, you had one idea or two that we put on that album.
I made the song.
You had one, yeah. The title track.
Title track, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And also we did. I just remember we tinkered with lots of ideas, small ideas here and there, and you just took that up and made something out of it.
Yeah, you had this bass phrase with like a power chord and some tapping, and
the bass tapping lines, yes.
I had this melody from a Faroese ballad, and we put it all together and harmonized it. It turned out quite nice, actually.
And we actually practiced. At that time, we practiced that album for real in the rehearsal room.
Yes, exactly. I remember.
For a long time, even before going into the studio. So
yeah,
we actually knew the stuff when we came into the studio, which is
which never happened after that. Since between that and the last album, Hail.
Exactly.
So I remember now. I was going to. We had a rehearsal room in Copenhagen. I started working on it with Kare while we were living at Øresundskollegiet, and we practiced. I guess every day, maybe twice a day. Some days we went down and tried some stuff for the album and went through it.
I think we practiced almost every day, so as much as we could anyway.
We were pretty good when we made that album. Yeah. All right, we're running short on time here. There's a comment. Let me see how much time we have. We have to end it now. I'll read this comment next time. So that was it for this time. You can follow us on Instagram, where we are tier_official. You can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where we are tierband. You can track us on bandsintown.com/tier. You can listen to our music on Amazon Music, Napster, Tidal, Apple Music, Deezer, and similar services. It might be good for bands to find out which of these services pay the most to the artists, because it makes a huge difference. Spoiler alert, it's not Spotify. Please visit our website, tier.fo, and
What the heck?
It never ends!
Earth is that. It's from Spaceballs. Please go to our website, tier.fo. At the bottom of the page, you can sign up for the Tour newsletter, and you can get some merch at the same place. It is scientifically proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that buying Tour merch will make all your dreams come true. Send your questions in the form of a comment wherever you happen to see or listen to this podcast, or write to us at tier@tier.fo. As I said, we put episodes out on the 7th and 22nd of each month, so you know when to tune in. Unless you gentlemen have more comments or more shenanigans, Gunnar?
Nah.
I will say, thanks for listening and hope to see you back in 2 weeks. Cheers.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Cheers, guys.
Bubba.